Lovely. So just sitting forward on the chairs, as long as it's comfortable, it's something to sort of build up, shall we say, this basic posture. Think of it as the sort of vehicle for everything else that we do, or like the house, if you like. Think of that if that's a better image. So that if we can become accustomed, certainly to the technical side of this, although that is adaptable depending on how far forward you are, whether you're seated, you're standing, whatever. There is this common feel going through your body, settling into the chair, of this sort of sitting down, this softening of the body inwards and downwards, and things that you might associate with it, the rooting, for me, the sense of space within the body, so that they work alongside the more technical side, and in some ways become dominant, but never leaving behind the technical side. So that in any particular situation, in any particular exercise, you actually have a sense of the feeling that you're looking for. So something like, say, the wild goose, it would be here, but part of the wild horse's mane would be here. And physically they're different. But in terms of that overall feel, they should carry the same qualities with them. So just rubbing your hands together and tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. And just striking the muscles going down your arm as you might strike a drum with a similar kind of expectation of a kind of vibration in that part of your body. On the other side. Upper part of your chest. And your belly. And sitting back with your feet out to get a sort of deeper sense of some of these qualities that we look for in the upright stances, the rooting down, the yielding to the pull of gravity that allows your weight, your center of gravity to drop, and feeling the response of your body to that. Response of your body and your mind, really, because in a sense, if we're bringing our attention into our body, then if we can follow the sensations downwards, then there's a sense in which our thoughts are dropping down. Maybe aware of any change in your breathing. And again, the sort of overall feel of the movement. I describe it as spaciousness. And one way I was thinking of it might be, for instance, if you've just bought a new pair of shoes and they're quite comfortable, but you go out, so you go down the shops, and when you come back, they're a little bit stiff. So when you take the shoes off, there's this sense that your feet sort of can breathe again. Sometimes we say things like that, and it's that none of these images, none of these ideas are definitive. They're all very personal, I think. So we start to get a sense again of what we're going to be trying to cultivate through these movements. So now when you come back to the upright position, and particularly people who are more experienced in this, you can shuffle around and you'll see immediately, oh, there I am. You kind of know when you're in the right place. And going back to what I was saying about the vibration when we were tapping, this relates to what I've been talking about recently, about this sort of depth of the movement, this sense of the movement going right into to the further reaches of your body, the bones, and so on. One image I sometimes use is of a musical instrument, and if you get a drum, for instance, and you tap it, you can feel the vibration underneath and around the body. And if you tap it next to another drum or a guitar, quite often that other instrument will resonate to that. An example of what I tend to think of as a kinetic energy, it's vibration going through the body. There's a lot of different energies in the body, used in lots of different ways. Energy, somebody once said, is the capacity to do work, and all of them connect. I think in these practices, but the main central energy that we work with, of course, in terms of Tai Chi with the movements, is what I think of as a kinetic energy to do with movement, and hence that when you hit a drum, it vibrates, it moves. And that's not to say that the other forms of energy don't have a place in these practices. I think they do, but you know the kind of way into that, I suppose you could say, would be through the movement. So just starting as always with turning your head very gently. Try to get the focus of your attention within your body. And so as you turn your head, where else can you feel the effect of the movement? It's not going to be very much in this case, but if we change now to this one with here, this looks a bit more obvious. A good place to start again, I think, is the very obvious areas of muscles in your chest and your upper back, maybe in your sides. And of course, I mean, I was talking about movement energy as though it's a separate thing. It isn't. There's a whole series of nervous and mechanical actions taking place with any movement that we take. Some of those can be quite specific, where I suppose the movement is a bit more general. And then going forwards, that movement, we want to be very fluid. We often use the image of moving through water, Tai Chi. But it's also fair to say, I think, that we move like water. Hands coming down to your sides, rotating. And it can be quite interesting with having a very kind of basic movement like this. By paying attention to the different parts of our body as we do the movement, we can perhaps begin to detect resonances there. I was talking about the muscles, but there's also what's referred to as the muscle skin, the fascia, which is a continuous layer, sometimes called the second skin, underneath our skin. Apart from our skin, it's the only unbroken tissue all the way through the body, apparently. And think of that as almost like a kind of elasticated clothing, like Lycra or something like that, that actually potentially there is movement through the whole body, a connection through your whole body. Because you might argue, going back to the analogy of the drum, the fascia, we said to be a bit like the skin of the drum in some way. And then changing. One of the significant things about that is that these very small changes within our body are more likely to be immediately affected by the imagery that we use, by the various ways that we focus our intent through awareness, through ideas and understanding, and so on and so forth. And so, arguably, this is where, or one of the places where what we think of as body, what we think of as mind, tend to come together. So back the other way. Let your hands rest, easing forwards. When we move from the center of our body, this area between hips and waist, we really do potentially touch every part of the body. You can see here, my pelvis rocks forwards and backwards. It sends my shoulders forward. It sends my weight into my feet, and so on and so forth. So there's a slight extension through my back, a contraction in the front of my body, a compression in my legs, and then that will change as the legs expand, the contraction in the back, expansion in the front of the body. Creating a very regular, smooth rhythm, a wave-like movement through your body. And if you imagine doing this in water, then as you went forward, you feel the pressure against the front of your body. A kind of what I would describe as a denser feeling. And then when you go back, that feeling changes to the back half of your body and then to the front. And imagine if you're carrying a bowl across a room and halfway across it sort of tilts a bit, and then you get that sort of very powerful sense, and you end up with water spilling all over the floor. It's possible, I think, to think of our intent being for that feeling to go forwards and then for that feeling to go back. This doesn't mean that we're no longer using our legs, of course. We are still using them. So this is a complementary aspect. No one thing, again, is ever going to tell the whole story. And then turning slightly. So more of your weight going into that leg. You're aware of the differences between the two legs when you do that. And then turn the other way. And by just rolling your pelvis and hips around, drawing your head and shoulders to a small circle, a fluid feeling in your back, as though your back were being very gently massaged, including your spine. And then go back the other way. And then step it out and back. The other side. And just sit for a moment, coming back to this sitting posture after those very simple exercises. Again, just noting how this feels. Calm in your mind, settled in your body. Maybe noticing your breathing. What little movements there are still in your body. Maybe you're feeling, sometimes we can get a sense of almost tingling in our fingers, for instance. Then, lifting your arms hang down by your sides, elbows out slightly. These muscles, the tone of the muscle, remember, big muscles of your arms, maybe even your shoulders, quite soft, like a balloon. So not rock hard muscle, but not just soft and squidgy. So if you get a balloon, if you push your finger in to the balloon, when you take your finger out, it returns to its shape. And at the same time, you push in and it comes back. You push in and it comes back. It's a very tricky point to try and maintain, especially when we start to move our arms. So turning your hands palm forwards. And when we go forwards and rotate and the bird folds its wings, remember your arms are hanging down by your sides. They're not going forwards and backwards. So really your only concern as far as your arm is concerned is this rotation from your shoulder. Remembering that previously when we were doing some of the initial exercises, we could feel certain connections to those rotating movements, connections in chest and upper back and so on. Bring this from the side so that you can see, and not getting to a point where I can turn my arm quite comfortably there. When I do that, I can feel a tightening beginning to develop. And we're wanting to maintain that sense of spaciousness within the body. When that tightening starts to set in, it becomes a barrier to that sense of the kinetic movement, the kinetic energy that I referred to earlier. That's like a kind of blockage in a river or something like that. So we're not trying to stretch. We're trying to cultivate a way of moving in terms of quality of movement, in terms of posture, in terms of how we use our attention and intention to sustain a sense of movement. Stretching, of course, may be part of that, but it should be done separately to these practices. And then leaving your hands facing backwards, fisherman cast the net. We gradually become familiar with the different patterns within the body, patterns of movement and change. And as we get to know those better and we associate them with particular exercises, then as our intent changes, we can change the exercise. So we have these routines. When you're familiar with the routine, when we get to the point where we move to the next exercise, the image, the overall image and awareness, sometimes quite subtle, is already in place. So the next movement is rolling the ball into the body. So as we come forwards now, we imagine the ball underneath our arms, going back, rolling the ball in. Some exercises, this whole process will be clearer than others for you, depending on, to a degree, personal preference. And then pigeon spreads its wings. Feeling in particular with this one, I think this expansion, opening and contraction or closing the chest and ribs, and then down into your belly. Next time, we change the pushing wave. Elbows go out still, but your hands stay more in front of your hips. So still an echo of that expansion, contraction in the front of your body. More subtle in some ways, more directed. The idea of pushing into something. One more. And then hands loosely fisted. One more time. And then just drawing your arms apart and doing these last three movements in a little sequence. So pigeon spreads its wings, pushing wave, and punch with both fists. And this time, as you come back into the pigeon spreads its wings, so that we get a chance just to feel the very subtle changes in some cases from one movement to another. Not so much what they look like, because that's the expression of the changes. And there isn't really a right or wrong here at this point. It's really just to help us become aware that there is a change. The nature of that change could vary, but we're learning, if you like, we're cultivating what we might almost call a method of awareness. Let's do one more round of this. Those changes represent changes in the kinetic movement, in the energy. Winding back now. But we can also feel them within each individual exercise. There's a broad rhythm here of expanding and contracting, of reaching out and of drawing back. And that can become very subtle and very nuanced, but in very broad terms, we see the pattern of the movement outward and inward, if you like to think of it like that. And so that's another change we've started to become aware of. And as we do, we begin to appreciate that none of these things are set in stone. We could describe this movement as like the waves on the beach, drawing back and pushing in. Drawing back and pushing in. But if you look at the waves on the beach next time you're there, you'll see they don't just draw back and push in. They sort of push in and they go back a little bit, and they might change direction and hit another wave or something like that. So they have a kind of almost fractal nature, I think, these changes. More and more we learn to just observe those changes. This time we're going to change to polishing the table, turning your hands palm down, you turn, tilt forwards, hips still sinking back, lengthening through your back and contracting in. So we can choose where to put our attention, where to put our intention, which are the most significant changes, which are the ones that maybe we want to eliminate, which are the ones that we want to cultivate, and so on and so forth. Not unusual to find that simply the focusing of your attention and your intention in a particular part of the body brings about the change, it would seem, almost automatically. Not always going to work like that. Sometimes we might think, oh, hold on, when I do this, maybe a shoulder's tightening up and you can't quite get it to loosen. So we think about how the shoulder relates to the movement, to our hips and so on and so forth, and whether we're maybe, maybe pushing from the shoulder rather than letting the whole body expand or something like that. One more time. Now, turning your hands palm up. Gentle press down through feet and hips, bring your back lengthening and contract. It's important to try and remember that your feet and your hips press downwards gently, however else we're thinking of this, because that ensures that or helps to ensure that we maintain the root, this feeling of connection to the ground, the dropping of our center of gravity. We're not trying to raise that up as we do this, but we're have the image of a plant growing out of its seed. The seed is deep in the ground. The plant extends out from it. And then on the returning stage, an even stronger sense of dropping. Maybe feeling what's happening here between hips and waist. You imagine there's like a ball or balloon there. Then as everything contracts, that balloon will be being compressed slightly, and then inevitably it will begin to expand. That helps with the pressure downwards, the root, but also with the movement upwards, of course. And then changing wild goose. Let's see if the image of the bird in flight conveys an overall quality that your body begins to slip into. Easing forwards, parting the clouds. A little bit more abstract, this image, but think of the last few days here. We've had these sort of like grey, dark skies, getting quite low. Every now and then, on occasions, the sun's come out, and when that happens, there's a kind of slightly more open, kind of an expansive opening up quality. And that's what we're looking for in this exercise. As we push up, feeling that expansive quality in belly, solar plexus, chest, sides of your body. And next, dragon plucks the stars from the sky. So here we've got a distinct sense of lengthening, but at the same time, maybe that same sense of expansiveness that we just felt in the previous exercise, a bit more focused and targeted in one side of your body. One more time on each side. Now, both hands together, expanding, contracting. Contracting, and then expanding, and once again. This rhythm in one way or another is felt through the entire system in Tai Chi. Whatever our interest, whether it's health or meditation, martial aspect, whatever, really, I personally wouldn't distinguish between those. Whatever your sort of purpose for being here, that basic rhythm and the interplay of yin yang is really one of the fundamentals. And then one foot out, scooping the sea and looking at the sky. Very careful with your back. This one, again, if I turn to the side so you can see, I can't use the other arm, but it's almost like somebody's taken hold of the top of your trousers. And then as you go forward, they're already pulling you back. So that creates a lengthening through your back and spine. Don't take that too far. Just still keep it comfortable, and then everything sort of draws in. And then grasping the tiger's ears. So here we go around and up. Again, don't take any notice of my further arm, not keep bumping into the chair. Again, we get that lengthening to the back. This time our intent is to send the head forwards and upwards. And that draws our arm across and up. So the last one, it was downwards. Now this is the trajectory that we have in our mind's eye. With that push up, that's where we want it to send our heads, shall we say. And then once again, change sides, scooping the seed, looking at the sky. These two, particularly this one, I think, probably the closest we come to an actual stretch, but still, you should feel that you could have gone a little bit further. So you keep that space for the energy to flow within your body. And then grasping the tiger's ears. Once more. Again, just sitting. Going back to the tapping, rubbing your hands together. And tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Shoulder, your arm. The other side. Upper part of your chest. Your belly. And your legs. Pushing your heels up. So feel the muscles of your legs waking up a little bit. And then circling that. Back the other way. Good. Okay, and then standing. So the standing posture reproduces the same feelings as I was talking about, and that we've identified in the body, because structurally it's going to be different. Feet should be below your legs, so not too close together. Toes pointing forwards as much as possible. Your weight a little bit forwards, about 70% of your weight in the front half of your feet. And that slight feeling of being pulled forwards by that, neutralized with your hips, once again, sitting back, sitting into the ground. you can see this movement brings me back to the upright position. And again, looking for that support through your legs, through your skeleton, just looking for something that allows a sense of resonance. One way that we can work with that, I'm going to use the chair to illustrate this, is you can just put your hands on the back of the chair, soften your knees, you push your heels up, and then just let them drop down. And I don't know if you can see, but I feel a little kind of like bounce. And that dropping down, it's quite a nice exercise for the back, actually, this one. But just getting that sense of slight shaking, quivering almost through your whole body. Soften your knees and your hips. So that's an exercise. You don't have to do it with the chair, but it can make you more stable. So when we go into the first set of exercises, we sink down and we push up. Our heels aren't coming up when we do this, but it's that same sense. You could almost imagine it's like boom. It's got that kind of quality, only done in slow motion. So sinking down, bringing your hands around in front of you, pushing up. And we'll do these as a little sequence of 3, dropping down. Change into the wild goose. And from here, change into part in the cloud. And once again, one more round. Good. So now, turn one foot out, step straight forwards, keeping the width of your step. The other foot, not a long step, moving the weight forwards and backwards. And don't do this, but again, there is that sense in which it's almost a bounce. If I were to go here, if I were to raise my back heel and then sort of drop back, I'd kind of get projected forwards, if you see what I mean. So everything is much softer than that. And it's very slowed down, so it's much more difficult to pick up. But if you did feel that sense of springiness when you were doing that movement with the heels coming up, again, it gives you an idea of what to look for. Your legs just compress slightly and then pushing you back, and your intention is for the movement to go from leg to leg. So take your time. Give yourself time to settle in each leg. In that moment of settling, you're waiting for the movement to expand. And in those moments of waiting, You can just be aware of your posture, your hips, your pelvis, your shoulders, and so on. And again, so we have a kind of interplay between a very obvious movement and a kind of settling between yang and yin. It's never absolute. In Chinese medicine, one of the principles of yin yang is that there was always a yang element within yin, always a yin element within yang. They're not separate things. Like the waves on the beach. So we could choose to look at this in very broad terms, or we could look at it in almost microscopic terms, depending on what's appropriate for us. Try not to ascribe a particular value or a particular movement. This is always yin or always yang. It's an interchangeable, dynamic approach. And then just sit back and you raise your toes and your heel. Hips just settle in. More of your weight going into your feet. And eventually you're able just to bring the empty foot, non-weighted foot in. Good. Shake your legs out. We'll do the other side just to point out to you. So I don't know how clear that is to you with the what is referred to as the Tai Chi symbol that represents yin and yang. You see, there's areas where there's a lot of yang and areas where there's not very much. And the same with the yin. There's a yang element within the yin and so on and so forth. So don't see it as a kind of rigid system in that sense. It's just a model for looking at these things. Now have your other foot forwards. With any of these images, any of these ideas, I'm always reminded of the saying by Bruce Lee, who said at one point that if you point a finger at the moon, if you use something to help you to identify something, don't mistake the finger for the moon. So the idea is that we might use the principles of yin yang and awareness of yin yang to help us broaden and deepen our experience of the movement, but it's the movement and the awareness of that movement that we're really trying to cultivate. When an image no longer works, you can put it to one side, it might work again later, but it's the actual end result, if you like, that we're looking for, not the image itself. Raising your toes and your hips. And then stepping in. And step through. And the other direction, just using that moment of settling in to your foot, as you say, raise your toes or your heel to check your structure, your posture. So this too becomes part of the regular rhythm, this sense of a return of your attention. And the benefit of that is in both mind and body, of course. Good. Okay, so shake out. Now have your right foot forwards. And we're going to go straight into the exercise, wind blows the willows. So move your weight into your back foot, but turn towards your front foot. Let that swing your arms out, go forwards, settle into your front and turn the opposite way. The upper body movements are reminiscent of the wild goose that we did earlier. Expanding and contracting. Weight goes forwards and turn. Weight goes back and turn. Wind blows the willows. Time as you turn, you can again raise your toes and your heel. You have your left foot forwards. Same thing, go into your back foot, turning your right towards the front foot. Don't turn too far. Just be aware that, if you turn too far or if you twist your back around, you start to lose that sense of the posture working for you. We'll be expanding, contracting, expanding, contracting. Raising your toes and heel, making sure you maintain the alignment of your posture as you do this. Because then this time you go forward, the back heel comes up, or if you can go the other way, bring the foot in. Take a step out. Same thing on the other side. This time, if it's appropriate, don't feel that you have to do this. You might even want to raise your leg a little bit. Do this very carefully, of course, especially if you're watching this, say, on YouTube and you haven't done this before. Always remember, this is not a competition. Take it to whatever point is appropriate to you. And then changing direction. Just be aware that the very act of raising your leg like this might cause you to sort of tilt. If that's the case, then well, I'll show you how we can work with that in a moment when we finish this. Good, and then bring your feet parallel. So go back to your chair. So I said at the beginning that we have, kind of like both what I'll describe as an intuitive sense of what we're trying to do, but also there's a technical thing. I was just saying, when we raise our leg, sometimes we find ourselves doing this, tilting over or straining in our back, and that's going to throw our posture out, of course, and make us less stable. So I wouldn't try and work that out in the middle of the exercise. It's too complicated. If you feel that you're going to, just put your foot down because it's a safety thing. But then later you could say, for instance, and I've done this, you could hold on to the chair and think, well, okay, what am I doing? How am I lifting the leg? Well, when I lift my leg like this or like this, you could start off like this. What happens to my shoulders, my back? And maybe you'll find as I did at one point, you know, lifting the leg up, you're kind of tilting over slightly. So, well, I don't need to do that. How do I find a way to raise the leg without the tilting over? And so on and so forth. You know, there's a whole process of investigation going on as we do this. And I think, again, you know, if we're talking about the what I would describe as the technical and the intuitive elements, again, I think of this as being a bit like, well, an aspect of yin yang. You know, and it's not that one or the other is important. More important, it's just that they should be able to come together, just as body and mind aren't separate. So our heart and our brain shouldn't be seen as being separate. In a lot of the Eastern meditative traditions, actually, you'll find that the term mind, that we often translate as mind, often embraces aspects that we might associate with the heart and vice versa. So there isn't that same kind of separation. In a sense, nothing is rejected. But now coming back to sitting, letting your arms drop down. So there's class on Thursday and on Tuesday following week. But then there'll be the break over the Christmas period. But we're here for the next week and a half. So embrace tiger, return to mountain, expanding, but with the emphasis very much on the contracting in this one, coming back, settling, quietening down. So even as your upper body is expanding, you can feel your hips sinking back in the chair, that slight sense of a pull inwards and downwards, coming back to the mountain, to central equilibrium. That quieter, stronger, more spacious quality, again, however you understand it, however you experience it. One more time. And rest. And open. Lovely. Thank you very much as always, everybody. So enjoy the rest of your day after that.